Hello and welcome to Good Evening Britain, a Force for Good's evening show coming to you live from our studios here in the heart of the great British city of Glasgow, with me, your host, Alistair McConnachie. Broadcasting as always on our Facebook page, our Twitter page, our YouTube page and our TikTok. And please, on TikTok, do come in with all your points of view, because we love to hear from you, Unionists and Scottish nationalists alike. And our point here is to spread the good news of the United Kingdom and the Union. And we do this once a week, every Wednesday from 7 until 8 p.m. Now, quite a bit to talk about this week. It's been a busy week, obviously, in the House of Commons, and today was a full house. For the first time in a long time, we saw all the MPs at Prime Minister's question time, and it was at least good to see the Parliament packed out, because that's what the British Parliament's meant to be about. It's not meant to be empty, it's not meant to be just like a few people hanging about. It's meant to be packed full of the community of the realm, as they say in Scotland, which is all people from all sides of the political equation and all people from all parts of the United Kingdom. That's the point of the Union Parliament, is to bring us all together, whoever we may be, from whatever point of the compass we may hail, and whatever our political point of view, we all come together in the Union Parliament and we talk and we debate and we disagree, and eventually we pass laws which are intended for the betterment of all of the United Kingdom, for all of us in the Union, in the United Kingdom. Not just for one little part of it, but for all of it. That's the ideal of the Union Parliament. That's the ideal that we hold to, that we are a unitary state. Scots, English, Northern Irish and Welsh, all one together, as our banner says, all for one, one for all. And that's represented at the Union Parliament. And I want to talk about that because I've been reading people criticising Westminster for various reasons and implying from that the Union is no good. So I want to get to that in a minute. And Adam says Boris is in trouble. Well, that's part of what's going on, isn't it? I'll talk about that in a minute. Here's what I want to just talk about just now. I was reading this article, okay, in the Times from a couple of days ago, Monday's Times, by Magnus Linklater. And I don't know where he stands one way or the other on the Union. He's certainly not like what we would call an authentic unionist. As far as I know, he's kind of for it, but he's for it in that sort of metropolitan way that just doesn't seem to really be for it very strongly, and certainly doesn't know what we know, which is how it's held together properly. So he's, but of course he's a journalist, and he has to play all sides of the political equation, and no doubt he does that very well. But in his article here, he says he's talking about how poorly, in many ways, the Westminster appears to be coming off in the eyes of the great British public. You know, especially with the so-called scandal around the drinks event in Downing Street. And of course, the media have been going overtime, because the media will never forgive Boris Johnson. The media will never forgive Brexiteers in any way, shape or form. And whether you think Boris was a genuine Brexiteer or not, the media since 2016, the British national media, mainstream media, has had it in for anybody who supported Brexit. And so the media is looking at its chance to play its role in trying to get rid of the Prime Minister. I don't know if they'll succeed or not, probably not, but they're going full guns at it, and everything else is now subsumed to this goal of making a big thing about the event in Downing Street. Anyway, they're able to basically dump a whole load of rubbish over Parliament so that it does not come out smelling very sweetly from the whole situation. And of course the media's been doing this since time immemorial, ever since there was a fourth estate, which is the name that the media is given. Ever since there was a fourth estate, they've always used their power to try to raise up or to try to bring down politicians, and very often to raise up and bring down the same politician. That's the power that the mainstream media has, and they're playing it and they're working overtime at the minute to really lay it on thick. Anyway, for your casual observer who looks at all of this, they're going to think, oh my goodness me, the Westminster, what a pit of trouble. What a pit of sleaze and corruption and lies and so on. And the media can do that because they've got the power to create that sense. Whether even if it's true or false, they've got that power to do so. And of course, everybody who's got some kind of interest will try to play along with that as well. Anyway, point is that in the face of all of this, Linklater says here that it begs the question of what being a Unionist party actually means when Westminster's reputation has been so badly scarred. In other words, and we hear this from the Scottish nationalists all the time, they'll look at Westminster and they'll say, oh, isn't that terrible what just happened yesterday, or what just happened the day before, or what happened last week. And that means that Westminster is beyond redemption, and that's why we need a Scottish Parliament that's separate. That's why we need independence. And that's an argument that they can make forevermore, because there'll always be controversies, there'll always be problems in a parliament, regardless of what parliament it happens to be. There's always going to be some kind of scandal. There's always going to be some politician that's been caught, putting his hand in the wrong pocket, in the wrong till, or what have you. There's always going to be that. So there's always going to be the ability of the Scottish nationalists to try to bring down Westminster in that way. So how do we as Unionists, how do we respond to that? How do we respond to that? Well, I'm just going to tell you right now how we respond to it. And let me give him an answer when he asks the question of what being a Unionist party actually means when Westminster's reputation has been so badly scarred, according to him. As pro-UK and as pro-British people, we believe in the Union Parliament. We certainly want to see politicians and parties performing admirably. We want to see them performing competently. We want to see them performing properly at Westminster at the Union Parliament. Of course, we want to see that because whatever the party or leader is, it helps to esteem the United Kingdom not only in its own eyes but in the eyes of the world. However, here's the critical point. Unionism, the belief, is not built upon the transient, impermanent, ever-shifting, ever-changing, good or bad performance or behaviours of particular politicians or particular parties at Westminster. It's not built on that. Indeed, if the United Kingdom had to depend for its existence upon the behaviour of particular politicians and particular parties from day to day, then the whole idea of the United Kingdom might have collapsed a long time ago. So certainly we don't have to depend for the United Kingdom's existence upon that. Rather, our unionist, pro-UK, pro-British attitude, our ideology, our philosophy is built on much more permanent things. It's built upon our permanent values of unity and solidarity. It's built upon the belief that there is such a thing as the British people, that there is such a thing as the British nation, and that we as people have a destiny to be united as a people and to work together for the good of all. And it's built upon the realization that we have more in common than what our differences may be. We have more in common than what separates us. And that it makes sense for our political institutions to reflect that fact. So the Union Parliament represents that ideal, and it's for us to constantly aim to live up to that ideal. And that's apart from whatever the particular performance or behaviours of certain politicians or certain parties may be. Okay, these are passing things. We believe in the permanent things. We believe in the British people and our potential to be united in solidarity together for the common good going forward for generations and generations to come. And I hope that answered Mr. Linklater's question there in the Times of the 17th of January 2022. And as Stephen says here, and this is at the heart of our message, the United Kingdom is a family. We will often fall out, but we will always be brothers and sisters. That's correct. We're a nation of families. The politicians like to talk about us being a family of nations, plural, but for us it makes more sense to reverse that and to say that we're a nation of families. And quite literally, you know, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, in-laws, living in all parts, all four corners of the United Kingdom. That's wonderful. That's wonderful. A nation of families. We've been publicising that, promoting that concept, because it really works. Eric Catchpole says, never give up the struggle. We must keep the union together no matter what the cost. Absolutely. And it's for the world's benefit. It's for the world's benefit that Britain is united. And please share this live if you can, folks, on Twitter and on Facebook and on TikTok. Please share, and do please give us a follow on TikTok if you can. Eco1314 says, do you think Boris should resign? Well, as an organisation, we're kind of staying out of that argument because we don't want to get into the party politics of it. We tend to be more for stability, and we're not sure that there's even anybody that could take over Boris's place, even if he did resign. I mean, we want, obviously from our perspective, we would want to see a Brexiteer, we would want to see a strong Unionist, we would want to see somebody who believes in Britain first economically, who wants to protect British industries, who wants to control the borders, who wants to do things like that. We're not sure that there's really anybody waiting in the wings of that calibre. Let's hope that there are some sort of people, but we can't think of any offhand. I don't know what Eco1314 believes. Do you think Boris should resign or not? Talking about resigning, there was a Tory MP resigned today. Did you know that? And what was his name? Let me bring it up. He was one of the Red Wall people who resigned. Christian Wakeford, MP for Bury South, was elected as a Conservative in 2019, one of the Red Wall people in what had been normally a Labour constituency. And today, the guy resigns and joins the Labour Party. And politics aside, but that's bad form, mate. I mean, that's bad form. People elected you as a Conservative, and you resign, and now you join the Labour Party. What kind of principles is that? What's that saying to all the people that wanted a Tory to represent them in Bury South, whatever you may think of the Tories. What's that saying to them? That's bad. I mean, how does somebody like that even get elected or get chosen to represent them? I mean, that's bad behaviour. That really is. And if you willingly cross the House like that, then there should be a by-election. You can't just get away with resigning and joining another party. Now, if you get thrown out your party and another party hoovers you up, that's a slightly different matter. But if you willingly turn your back on your constituents and join another party, that really is a by-election matter. At least I think so. I don't know what you guys think. If you've got any thoughts, please send those in. Stephen says he should become an independent or he should resign, and we have a by-election. I would never trust him in the future. Well, that's for certain. Absolutely. Absolutely. Let's do On This Day in British History. On this day in British history. Because British history matters. British history matters. Oh my goodness me. That's just reminded me of something else I have to say in a minute. British history matters. Now, today on the a kind of sad day in a way, 19th of January 1915, the first civilian casualties in Britain from an air raid perished. Today, on the night of the 19th of January 1915, 4 people were killed by bombs being thrown out of German Zeppelins. Zeppelins being these big airships. And what unfortunate people to get killed in this way. And I'll just tell you their wee story here, because it's kind of ridiculous and absurd and just a pity, really, what it happened. But I found this story. I found the article here on Zeppelins over Norfolk. Now, essentially, what happened was that 3 Zeppelins set out to bomb the Thames estuary, but they got lost in the night, and they ended up over Norfolk. Well, one of them actually went back, but they ended up completely lost over the east coast, southern east coast of England. And they threw the bombs out, and the first bomb landed in a little village called Sheringham. And thankfully, nobody died. But that's the plaque there that says the first bomb to be dropped on Britain in World War I fell in this yard on 19th of January 1915. And so that's the two. That's where they came in there, floating all over that peninsula there of Norfolk. And then the first people to be killed were these 2 unfortunate people. Local shoemaker Samuel Smith, 53, was killed along with 72-year-old Martha Taylor, okay? Living in or around that area there. Died from bombs that were thrown out. Now, those were in Great Yarmouth. And other bombs were thrown out, but just property was damaged. That's one of the Germans that was doing it. And then the other airship went on and dropped some bombs out over King's Lynn. And this struck me right. This poor woman here, Alice Gasley, died probably in that house, actually, in Bentink Street, King's Lynn. I mean, how unlucky would you have to be? And her husband, Percy, had been killed 3 months earlier while serving in the Rifle Brigade in October 1914. And so she's sitting there at home mourning her dead husband, and a bloomin' German drops a bomb out that lands on her house and kills her as well. I mean, that's just messed up. That's messed up. And this wee boy here, 14, also died. Percy's mother, and he was also called Percy. Percy's mother said, "We were all upstairs in bed when I heard a buzzing noise. My husband put out the lamp and I saw a bomb drop through the skylight and strike the pillow where Percy was lying. I tried to wake him, but he was dead. Then the house fell in. I don't remember anymore." And that's where Alice Gasley is buried, along with Percy Gote, in Hardwick Road Cemetery, King's Lynn. What does that say? Alice Maud Gasley, who was killed during a raid by a German airship on King's Lynn, January the 19th, 1915. So these 4 people were the first civilian casualties of air raids in the United Kingdom, and we should really maybe know more about them and maybe remember them going forward, because that's blooming unfortunate that that happened. But it was a war. And there's one of the posters, British posters. "It is far better to face the bullets than to be killed at home by a bomb." Well, that's a bit of a Hobson's choice, but perhaps it's true. I don't know. Perhaps that's the sort of posters that they did back in those days. So, goodness sake, yeah, that's on this day in British history. The first civilians to be killed by any kind of air raid on British soil were these 4 unfortunates in King's Lynn and Great Yarmouth, of all places, and only because the German Zeppelins completely lost their way and just decided to basically bomb whatever lights that they could see down below. Such is the luck or fate in war. Today is the last day where you can respond to the Edinburgh Council's public consultation on statues and street names. And we'll put the link up there for anybody who wants to respond to that consultation. It closes at midnight. Force for Good has responded to it. And it's a complete joke, really. I mean, it's of very little value. Unfortunately, there's a bit of power behind it, and so the SNP misadministration of Edinburgh is heavily promoting the beshitting, essentially, of their own heritage, of Scottish heritage. We wrote a very good article about that this week called SNP Council Dump on Edinburgh History. And we pointed out that they do these kind of things. They do these kind of things because they have no regard. They have no regard for that period in Scottish history, what we call the period of achievement, which was essentially the 1800s and 1900s, when Britain really ruled the waves, as it were. They have no regard for that because it's a direct consequence of the Union of 1707, which of course they disapprove of. And so they don't want anything to do with that. And if they can bring down that history, which is essentially the what a lot of our modern world around in our big cities is built upon, then all to the good as far as they are concerned. And it was Professor Tom Gallagher who summed it, what I've just said, up much better than how I've just said it, when he said, "The SNP is nothing if not a self-referencing movement. It sees the story of Scotland's greatness, beginning with its arrival on the historic stage. So it is necessary to delegitimise episodes and people from the wider consciousness, especially from the age of achievement that characterised much of the 3 centuries of Parliamentary Union." So if you want to try your hand at that public consultation, we've got the link up there on our Facebook and YouTube pages, and we'll also put it up on the Twitter page. And we'll also put up the link to the article that we wrote as well. SNP want to dump on Edinburgh's proud history. And their public consultation is very much based upon various false assumptions. The false assumption is that Edinburgh's history was quote-unquote racist. Well, of course it wasn't. But it works from that assumption. And if you work from that assumption, then you imagine that you've got something to apologise for, which of course you don't have. They also base it on an incorrect moral equivalence, where they equivalize, is that the word? They equate slavery with colonialism, which of course are two completely different things, and indeed two completely different moral things, because good moral things can occur through colonialism. But we're all agreed that slavery is bad. We're not all agreed that colonialism was bad. So again, that's a moral equivalence which is incorrect, but nevertheless they based their consultation on that incorrect moral equivalence. So it's an awkward one to navigate. It's an awkward consultation to navigate, but it's good just to do it and to say, look, don't attack Scotland's history. I mean, they even attacked David Livingstone, for crying out loud, in this public consultation, because his memory was so powerful to the furtherance of the British Empire at the time. They don't like him for that reason, not for anything that he did, just they don't like that his memory was used to encourage people in the British Empire. What a bunch of tossers they are, basically, at the SNP Council. They really are. Let's give a big shout out, a big shout out to Dramatic Scotland Creations on Facebook. Search for Dramatic Scotland Creations. They produce these amazing flags, and you can get all sorts of flags. If saltires are your bag as well, they do saltires, and they do any kind of flag that you want. So we are so pleased to see that there. Good. Okay, we'll be giving a shout out regularly to that organisation, because we're also doing a wee deal with them where we're going to be selling many of their flags, or at least giving away their flags on our website for a donation, and these flags will be added to our shop, and you'll be able to make a donation and get a flag at the same time. Great deal that we're doing with Dramatic Scotland Creations. What were they called again? That looked smashing. Dramatic Scotland Creations. Search for them on Facebook and you'll quickly find them. The organisation will do anything for you, Strobo Steve. They'll do anything for you. I should imagine. I can't speak for them as far as that's concerned, but I know they do all sorts of flags. Good. Now, every week now, we're going to be doing something called Busting Indie Myths. Okay? Busting Indie Myths. And we're about to mention an indie myth. Busting Indie Myths. Okay? Last week we bust apart the indie myth that Britain is not a nation, and we were very clear that Britain is a nation. It's a great nation. It's a nation of unions built up through time, and it's a nation of families which is being created every day. In today's Busting Indie Myths number 2, we want to address the oft-heard Scottish nationalist claim that Scotland is too wee, too poor, and too stupid to be independent. Of course, they pretend that's what Unionists say, but the only people who are actually saying that are in fact the Scottish nationalists. They're putting out a straw man argument. They're talking about nonsense and putting it upon their opponents. In some ways, they're projecting themselves onto their opponents, because none of the Unionist people have ever said such a thing, nor would anybody ever say such a thing, nor would anybody ever believe such a thing. Nobody is saying such a thing other than the Scottish National Party and its supporters. And to this foolishness, we simply point out that Scotland is big enough, and Scotland is rich enough, and Scotland is clever enough to share its wealth and to share its resources with the rest of our family throughout these islands. And you know, we don't want to hoard our wealth. If Scotland is rich, then we share it with the rest of the United Kingdom. We understand Scotland is rich enough to share its resources. It's big enough to share its resources. It's clever enough to share its wealth and resources with the rest of the United Kingdom. That's the point of being in a union. So whenever you hear a Scottish nationalist saying something like that, remind them we're big enough, we're rich enough, and we're clever enough to share our wealth and resources, and we're clever enough to stay in the UK. And on that point, you know, why are supporters of Scottish nationalism upset if money or wealth is going to the rest of the United Kingdom? You know, many of us cannot fathom that attitude. Surely it should be a matter of pride that we're helping our family throughout the rest of the United Kingdom, and that they're often able to help us as well. That's what being in a union is meant to be about. That's what it's meant to be about. Sharing and being together in order to benefit from association. And it's almost like we've called it an inferiority theme. And the SNP do promote inferiority themes like that. We're being ignored. Nobody's listening to us. Nobody wants to talk to us in Westminster. We're all alone. It's like an inferiority complex almost. And that, what I just talked about, that lie about the too wee thing, too poor thing, that comes from like a sort of inferiority sense. They should recognise that and not talk like that. Not talk like that. You have to talk big. Talk up. Talk things up, you know? If you believe in Scotland, you talk it up. Which is what we as Unionists do. Alexander Cameron says, everyone's welcome to come to the Freedom Rally in Aberdeen at Castlegate at 1 p.m. on Saturday. Now, just to be clear, that the Freedom Rally is freedom from the unnecessary restrictions which are being imposed upon Scotland at the moment. And there's several of these freedom rallies happening throughout the United Kingdom this Saturday, the 22nd. They're not to be confused with the all under one banner rallies or anything like that. These are completely different. Now, talking about the all under one banner thing, they are allegedly having a kind of March of the Undead this Saturday in Glasgow, but it will be very small. There'll be nobody at it, and they might disturb 2 or 3 seagulls or something like that, but they're not really going to make much of an impact. And they're walking in an area that's basically there is nobody, like along Ingram Street, where they might pass maybe 2 or 3 ladies who lunch or something like that, and then they get to the high street, and then they're in Glasgow Green, so nobody's really going to see them anyway. So we're not going to be bothering. We're not going to be bothering with them. No, that's just not worth getting out of bed for, as we always say. Yes. Now, folks, it wouldn't be a show if I did not mention the wee book, a wee book for the Union, which is our bestseller. If you don't have one, every household should have one. It's only a £5. We'll put the link up there. If you are a Union supporter, donating more than £10 a month, you'll get one of these free of charge anyway. But if you're not a Union supporter, you might want to buy one for a £5 at our link. But we sell a lot of these. These go to a lot of opinion formers, and it makes an impact. It makes an impact because we've been seeing MPs now talking about Britain as a nation of families, and that was one of the key points that we promoted in this wee book. And of course, there's also our Do More Together 40-page magazine, and you can get both of these together for a discount at our shop, and we'll put the link up for those two, because selling these keeps us going, which means we can continue to promote our work on the internet. And so you get a good product, and in return you get our programming. So it's a 360 win, as a famous American likes to say on his show every night. A 360 win. Absolutely. James says the bloke who says he's a prisoner, or seems to imagine that he is, has no idea what that means. If he was a prisoner, he wouldn't be living a great life of freedom in Great Britain. That's true. That's true, isn't it? We are living a great life, although just certainly recently our freedoms have been constricted, but we believe that that the country is strong enough to get out of that and get back to what we were before a lot of unnecessary restrictions came in. But as far as the rest of the world is concerned, Britain still is a leader at that, and long may that continue, because some of the Anglosphere countries seem to be going down the pan. Oh my. But let's not concentrate on that too much. Twigman, hi, great work. AFFG, thank you. Tommy says, congratulations, Alan. And Stephen says, congratulations, Alan, as does Debbie. So congratulations to us, to you from us. And Alan says, woo, thanks. Great stuff, Alan. Great to have you on board. James says, well done, enjoy your prize. Stephen says, are you making a second edition of the Wee Red Book? Well, actually, this is the third edition, in the sense of the third print run, and it has not changed as far as words are concerned, although we did change one or two spellings of words. So this is essentially exactly the same as the very first edition. And we're not expecting that we'll be changing this really in any way. We'll be producing different material this year. We're hoping to produce a booklet on busting indie myths, all the things that we're talking about, the busting indie myth, the indie myth that we bust each week. We're going to be adding those all together and producing a book directly about that, which will really help our activists. James says, I love this wee book that I got. Quite a read when you're on the train or something like that. Absolutely, and you can read it in a couple of hours. And Christopher loves the publication. Excellent publication. We'll take that photograph, we'll put it up, and we'll use it to sell the book. Catherine says, what do I think of the seabed auction? Well, do you know what? That's the selling the seabed, or not selling it, but hiring it out to wind companies. And I don't have enough information to know whether it's a good, bad, or indifferent thing, other than it's not a good idea to rely entirely upon wind energy for our future. And the people who tell us that we should rely upon wind energy are exactly the same people who will complain when prices of energy go through the roof and when in fact the country gets plunged into darkness and coldness, and they'll blame it on the union or they'll blame it on the Tories or whatever, and the last thing they'll do is blame it on the policies that they've been promoting. The last thing they'll do is blame it on the net zero policies which they've been promoting. So that's really all I'd say about that. And James says, yes, focus on the good about Britain. That's why James is a member of A Force for Good, and we thank you very much for all of that, James. And we are, Nelson, on the right side of history, and it will be proven in time, as you say. Congratulations, absolutely. And the person who foolishly spoke of the Stockholm Syndrome would be living a highly unfree and impoverished life in an Indy, Scotland, says Christopher. Tend to agree. Folks, thank you very much. Oh, Stephen says, I noticed one of my work colleagues wearing the Union heart. It was a great feeling. Haha, fantastic. This is our Union heart. And you can get that. I'm wearing one right now. You can get that from our shop. And we'll put up the link to the shop there. And these are great wee things. It's a Union heart and it says A Force for Good through the middle of it, with gold lining. Okay, folks, we'll be back for our third Good Evening Britain next Wednesday at 7 o'clock, broadcasting across all our platforms, and we'll be back on TikTok as well. So thank you to everybody who's come in, especially to everybody on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter and TikTok. Please share and please follow. It just remains for me to say thank you very much for watching. God bless the United Kingdom and God save the Queen. See you next week.